The Clone Wars was one of the deadliest conflicts in galactic history, involving many terrible, deliberate atrocities such as the Lodorvian brainrot plague and the bombardment of Humberine. But one of the war's nastiest atrocities, believe it or not, was mostly accidental. When clone gunners aboard a Republic assault ship shot down the Separatist core ship Gehenna over Honoghr, they probably figured they'd just saved the day. But as it turned out, the destruction of the Gehenna unleashed a deadly bioweapon on Honoghr, which devastated the entire planet. Today, we tell the story of the Battle of Honoghr and its terrible aftermath.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
This story begins with Jenna Zen Arbor, a brilliant scientist and terrorist who fell in with the Separatists just before the Clone Wars. During the war, she developed a number of bioweapons for the Confederacy, which saw great value in weapons that could wreak havoc on the Republic's clone army, but were harmless to battle droids. One of Zen Arbor's bioweapons, nicknamed Swamp Gas, was deployed against a colony of Gungans on Omar Dun, a moon in the Naboo system, 3 months into the Clone Wars. The Gungan colony was wiped out almost instantly, but a team of Jedi and clones sent to investigate proved much more resistant to the bioweapon. They destroyed the Confederacy's stores before the weapon could be unleashed on Naboo. After the Battle of Omar Dun, Obi-Wan Kenobi and a team of Jedi located the lab on Qieta where the swamp gas had been produced. They infiltrated the lab and, after a battle with Asajj Ventress and Dirge, destroyed it. Before the facility's destruction, however, Kenobi recovered an antidote to the swamp gas. He brought this back to Coruscant where it was mass-produced. Republic strategists hoped the antidote would eliminate the threat of Zen Arbor's bioweapon for good. But as it turned out, samples of the gas and most of the lab equipment had been evacuated from Qieta before the Jedi strike team arrived. It had been transferred to the Gehenna, a Rii'ke-class core ship that had been partly converted into a research facility. The Gehenna cruised across Separatist space for the next 2 years, improving on the swamp gas to create new, more horrible bioweapons. In 20 BBY, the research team on the Gehenna developed the Confederacy's most destructive bioweapon yet, Trihexalophine 1138. Despite being derived from it, this weapon was nothing like Zen Arbor's original swamp gas. It was a liquid for one thing, and primarily a defoliant. Its purpose was also far more sinister. It was meant to poison planetary water supplies and obliterate plant life, thus rendering entire planets uninhabitable. Separatist leaders wanted the Gehenna to deploy the weapon against Naboo, like they had planned to use the swamp gas, probably on Newt Gunray's request. However, the Gehenna happened to be on the other side of the galaxy when this order came through, and the Republic learned of the plot while the research vessel was still en route. An Acclamator-class assault ship intercepted the Gehenna above the planet Honoghr. We don't know much about the ensuing ship-to-ship battle, except that it was fierce. It descended into the lower atmosphere where both the Acclamator and the Gehenna were critically damaged. On both ships, the majority of the crews evacuated their vessels, fleeing in escape pods to the planet below. Those left aboard the Acclamator got the ship back into orbit where they called for reinforcements and emergency repairs. The Gehenna, meanwhile, went down, smashing into a mountain peak before coming to a rest in the forest below. Honoghr was a beautiful planet dominated by vast rainforests and towering mountain ranges, and during the Clone Wars, it was fairly obscure, located rimward of Hutt space in the Kessel sector. It had an indigenous sentient species, the Noghri, a hairless race of humanoids known for their tremendous strength, incredible reflexes, tough skin, and an extremely keen sense of smell, which allowed Noghri to discern a person's bloodline through scent alone. The Noghri were some of the best warriors in the galaxy. Most of the galaxy didn't know this, since the Noghri clans weren't technologically advanced and mostly fought among themselves. Honoghr had no stake in the Clone Wars, or galactic civilization for that matter, but the war came to Honoghr anyway, and it changed the planet forever. When the Gehenna crashed, the Trihexalophine 1138 leaked and contaminated the planet. The Noghri, unaware that their entire world had just been sentenced to death, looted the escape pods that had crashed in the jungle and the wreck of the Gehenna, killing any survivors they found. They looted the bodies and wreckage for trophies, including a crucial piece of equipment from the Gehenna, the ship's Scientific Information Package, or SIP, a black box containing records of all the bioweapons research the crew of the Gehenna had been conducting. When Republic reinforcements under Jedi General Rii'ke arrived, they realized they needed to recover the SIP, or Honoghr and any other world the Separatists used bioweapons on would be doomed. General N tracked the SIP to an ancient Rakatan temple which Noghri of various clans zealously protected. The SIP, as well as some other objects recovered from the crash site, had been brought to one of the temple vaults as offerings to the Noghri's gods. General N reported this, but before he could act, Noghri warriors slew him and his men. General Aayla Secura, Commander Bligh, and a detachment of the 327th Star Corps were dispatched to the temple shortly after, tasked with recovering the SIP at any cost. As they infiltrated the temple, they found that Count Dooku had sent an agent to recover the SIP for the Confederacy. This agent was Quinlan Vos, who was actually on an undercover mission for the Jedi Council. Vos, Secura, and Bligh teamed up to recover the SIP, but a battle broke out outside the temple when Vos tried to take the package back to Dooku, wanting to gain the Count's trust. Commander Bligh ultimately forced Vos to flee empty-handed, however, and the SIP ended up in Loyalist hands. Despite the SIP's recovery, the Republic did nothing to help Honoghr. Over the next few months, the Trihexalophine spread across the planet, contaminating the water table and destroying all plant life in its path. Millions of Noghri died, and the rest were driven from their homes as the rainforests withered around them. By the end of the Clone Wars in 19 BBY, the entire planet was devastated. Almost all of its plant life was driven to extinction, leaving Honoghr a world of barren plains ravaged by toxic rain. As the surviving Noghri faced extinction, searching in vain for a part of Honoghr that remained free of the Blight, Darth Vader and a unit of stormtroopers arrived. When the strangers disembarked from their ships, the Noghri attacked, slaughtering every last one of the stormtroopers with ease. Vader was able to fend them off, but the Noghri's skill had impressed him immensely, and he had them take him to their leaders. He made an offer to the surviving elders of Honoghr, promising to decontaminate their world in exchange for their warriors' service. The Noghri had no choice but to accept Vader's offer. Their greatest warriors left Honoghr to become the Death Commandos, Vader's personal assassins, sworn to serve the Dark Lord for life. The remaining Noghri were moved to one of the better off parts of Honoghr, which Imperial scientists partially restored. This region, called the Clean Lands by the Noghri, became an oasis in Honogr's vast poisonous desert. There, 10 million Noghri lived in poverty as Imperial scientists purportedly worked to expand the Clean Lands, slowly decontaminating the planet. Unbeknownst to the Noghri, however, the Imperial decontamination effort was a scam. The Empire was actually doing everything in its power to keep Honoghr poisoned, intending to trap the Noghri in perpetual servitude. Since the Noghri had no idea how the decontamination process worked, they were blind to this deception. To further ensure their loyalty, Vader told the Noghri that the ones who had poisoned Honoghr were the rebels who were fighting the Empire. Thus, the Noghri served the Empire for nearly 30 years. Things only started to change on Honoghr in 9 ABY when the Noghri were visited by Vader's daughter. On a mission for the New Republic during the Thrawn campaign, Leia Organa Solo came to Honoghr. Using their keen senses, the Noghri immediately detected that she was the daughter of Darth Vader, and when Leia said that Vader was dead, they honored her as his heir, naming her Lady Vader. By revealing the truth about the Imperial decontamination program, Leia convinced the Noghri to abandon their loyalty to the Empire, allying with the New Republic and Vader's heir instead. They went on to play a crucial part in the defeat of Grand Admiral Thrawn, with Rii'ke, a Noghri death commando, fatally stabbing the Grand Admiral during the Battle of Bilbringi. In the years that followed, the Noghri became valued members of the New Republic, which set about restoring Honoghr and resettling Noghri to more habitable worlds. So that was how the crew of a Republic warship inadvertently committed genocide against the Noghri of Honoghr. But what do you think? Would you like to see more videos about the Noghri? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.